Okay. No. Hello, everyone. So we're live now, and we are going to start our session, a panel, a very important panel on youth as partners in policy making and how we can strengthen the intergovernmental cooperation for the inclusive governance. And when I talk about the inclusive governance, we're talking about how we are going to engage youth into the governance process and how we are going to make sure that if the youth is included and are they participating effectively or not. And it's not just the intergovernmental cooperation. When we talk about such cooperation, it does become multilateral. As we are speaking at the platform of the International Youth Conference, and of course it is multilateral. We have multilateral partners like the United Nations Association for San Francisco, and many other international non-profit organizations such as AFS and Youth Assembly. So the cooperation is not just intergovernmental. And in this session, we are going to discuss just about that, like how with the expert panel we have, and with this expert panel we are going to discuss how we can make the intergovernmental cooperation and for inclusive governance possible. To start with the session, I'm going to pass the floor one by one to each speaker, so you can just introduce yourself briefly for 2 minutes. And once we are done with the introduction, then we'll move forward towards the keynote and question and answer. So to begin with, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Sara Neri, so she can introduce herself. Maria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Maria Saraneri and I'm 22 years old. I was born in Africa. I was raised up in Italy, but I'm currently living in France because I'm part of Erasmus Plus projects that is taking place here. I'm a law student. I'm specializing myself in the field of international law, namely the field of child protection. And aside my academic path, I'm a UNIS advocate and the European Young Ambassador for the project known as Build the EU2, and is a project promoted by the European Parliament, and its aim to increase the youth participation in European elections of 2024. That's all. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Maria. Next, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mustafa as El Arab to introduce himself.
Hello, Mustafa Az Arab. I am 29 years old. I am Associate Minister of Youth and Sports in Egypt for Cultural and Community Development. And I worked as head of policy unit in the Ministry of Youth and Sports for 2 years before. And I am member of Supreme Council of Culture in Egypt as youngest member there since I was 21 years old. I am working on the community development since 10 years, I think, 10 years, yes. And I was the representative of Ministry of Youth and Sports as a head for youth activities in COP27 and the focal point for the Egyptian government during the COP17, which held in Egypt last year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Indeed, it is an honor to have you and everyone else on board with us, and we'll have more discussion. Next, I would like to give the floor to Asutosh so he can introduce himself.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's good morning over here from where I'm speaking. My name is Ashutosh Patnaik. I'm a former United Nations diplomat and currently serving as honorary consul in the UAE, especially in Dubai. I'm Indian by nationality, but I've been living in Dubai since I was 1 year old. I'm also a special advisor to the honorary consul of Lebanon here in Bangkok, Thailand, and also working very closely with the Lebanese government on the honorary consul affairs and multilateral diplomacy with regards to the ASEAN region. Apart from that, I'm also the co-founder of United Youth Circuit, which is an intergovernmental organization in itself and a think tank. I am also the chairman of United Future Group, which is an investment firm where we basically work majorly with African nations on mostly foreign direct investments and strengthening youth participation in entrepreneurship by seeding the investments for projects mostly in Africa. So far, we have also secured more than $50 million for a lot of upcoming entrepreneurs from around Africa, majorly in Somaliland, Ivory Coast, Kenya, South Africa, and many more. So this is my brief profile. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the introduction, distinguished speakers. And now we'll fast forward, move to the conversation. And when we talk about, as you know, the topic of the conversation is about youth as partners in policy making. We have noticed, especially in global south, that young people are hardly included into policy making, or if they are included in policy making, it's very cosmetic, and they are just on the table of decision making just because they want to tick the checkbox and want to get done with it. And this is a challenge that we face, young people face, to get involved into the policy making. So the question from all of you is like, what are one of the common challenge that you think that young people face when it comes to the inclusion of their voice in policy making? And I would like to start with Mr. Mustafa to answer this question.
Thank you. First of all, I will send my greetings from Egypt. I'm very glad for giving me this opportunity to communicate with young people globally in such a great event like this, to share this intergovernmental efforts in Egypt in promoting youth inclusion and participation in public policy, which making during the last 10 years, which lead to give the opportunity to many young people to be appointed in leadership position working on decision making and policies. And I am one of them, by the way. Egypt has a large youth population. Youth between 18 and 29 years represent 1/5 of the population in Egypt, and we have long faced the challenge in adopting serious national policies for youth inclusion and participation. And there has been an absence of political commitment towards preparing youth for leadership, in addition to promoting youth engagement in policy making. And reviewing youth participation literature revealed that absence of such strategy can potentially contribute to social and political unrest in society. Following the announcement of the Year of Youth in 2016 by the current political leadership, His Excellency Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Mr. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, there were a number of initiatives and activities to engage youth in public discussions. These efforts involved the initiation of governmental leadership programs, such as the Presidential Leadership Program, National Youth Conferences, and the establishment of the National Academy for Youth Training and Empowerment. Since 2016, the current Egyptian political leadership was keen on organize a communication tool with youth through the National Youth Conference, starting with Year of Youth, as I mentioned before, in 2016. The first youth conference was organized in Sharm el-Sheikh that year in presence of the president and ministers and all government officials and the promising youth leaders to discuss the challenges, plans, and the priorities of the government in the upcoming years. Throughout 2016 and 2017, 4 national youth conferences were held in different governorates in Egypt, from Upper Egypt to Alexandria, Luxor, Aswan. We had in Sharm el-Sheikh many times to discuss the Egypt's vision 2013 and the national and social, political and economic policies in the vision's agenda. There was 3 main challenges facing promoting youth participation in policy making. First one, lack of awareness of the importance of youth participation. The second one is the lack of qualification of youth to engage in the policy-making process. And the third one is the absence of trust between youth and officials in the presence of the commitment for promoting participation in engagement in policy-making. One of the challenges is the absence of commitment strategy to engage youth in policymaking or relevant decisions. These challenges contributed to lack of trust in the existence of a plan or a tool or connecting youth with policymakers. That was a key factor that contributed to the social and political unrest that took place post January 21. As you know, it was a great revolution here in Egypt, and many youth decided to withdraw from the public domain and focus on their personal life due to absence of the feel or of the real change taking place on the national level. There was a need to conduct studies to understand the scientific methods to approach use after the evolution. And in 2015, the government believed that it is essential to understand the use and their needs through the Governmental Research Center. The Egyptian government started to adopt a new strategy in approaching youth groups, especially post the revolution, and national research centers were approached by the political leadership in order to understand the need of youth on social and political levels. The recommendations of the research centers drew the guidelines of youth strategy. The study concluded that the youth need to the following things. First one, the need to be heard and have an opportunity to express opinions and ideas, and the need to comprehensive for a comprehensive model of empowerment on social and economic level. The third, the need to focus on capacity building and empowerment opportunities, and sustaining youth participation in policy making and its implementation is a challenge. The youth participation offer requires the establishment of an institutional committed tool to ensure the efficiency and sustainability. Therefore, in 2021, the Egyptian government, through the Ministry of Youth and Sports and in cooperation with UNIFE Egypt, began preparing a national strategy for youth and adolescents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, for this important insight. And next, I would like to invite Ms. Maria Sara to answer the same question on the challenge of inclusion of youth in decision-making process.
Hello, everyone, again. And as a young ambassador, I would like to begin from what I mean with the word advocacy. According to me, the word actually comprises those actions which effectively stand up for the cause of another. And I would like to highlight the two last words, cause of another, because if you think about it for a moment, we are all others, just with different timings. Today, there is someone else in need for our support, for my support, but tomorrow we are going to be the ones falling down in the same situation and circumstances. And we will definitely need to feel the same solidarity aside us. And it's from this reflection that now I'm going to approach the problematic field of youth unemployment. And I would like here to share one concrete experience of mine in the field. And so was 1 year ago, in June 2022, me and a group of other young peers brought up to the European Parliament a proposal of law concerning the European minimum wage. Because Italy, my origin country, together with Austria, Cyprus, Denmark, Finland, and Sweden, does not have a minimum legislation yet. So the substance of our proposal was a reflection centered on the Articles 36 and 39 of the Italian Constitution, focusing on the minimum and decent wage. A remark to be done in this field is that in the period between 1990 and 2020, according to data published by the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the change in Italian salaries dropped to 2.9%. And I want to highlight here that Italy has been the only European country in which wages have fallen since 1990. So I wanted to share this experience for saying that we can no longer wait. Our generation is already moving towards adulthood, and we cannot be accomplices of a future that is not forward-looking, that is not looking on our direction. So it's up to us to raise our voice. And in addition to that, I firmly believe that it's only through our active participation that we young people could play a vital role. It's needed that the process of policymaking evolves accordingly to how our instances grow and how our ideas of future grow, and concretizes in our minds and our souls. Today's youth population, aged between 15 and 24, is composed by 1.2 billion people, representing the largest cohort to enter in the transition of adulthood. So the majority of these young people, namely the 88%, live in the developing countries. Moreover, these young people, we are the world's next generation and the unique assets. So if properly nurtured, we can act as engines. And linking to this reflection, I want to get to the real answer and of your question, and also the why of my involvement, because they are linked. In my involvement in the Build EU2, I decided to apply before being selected for the mentioned project, because I think that it would have been the perfect opportunity to carry on my daily activism, associating it with the one precisely directed to my peers, because there is a huge lack of awareness in the act for being active, and our peers for informing and raising awareness in order to the importance of taking actions in the global society we live in. And so, because I do think once again, that it's only by working together that we can change things for real. Well, for what concerns this project, I want also to highlight that my contribution will not be about to influence people to vote for a specific political party, because mine is a non-political position, but it will be just based on raising awareness on those values laid out in the Article 2 of the Treaty of Lisbon, in the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, in the Charter of United Nations signed on 26 June 1945 here, while there in San Francisco. And I mean democracy, I mean human dignity, social justice, because they are the only ones which could enable us to reach the inclusive governance we wish for. And these values must dominate every political and social choice, period. I would like to invite you to think for a moment about the relevance, the strength, the power of a general and a unique voice, made up of all our single and individual voices, brought up together in a coherent action and purpose-oriented action, wouldn't be the most powerful weapon in the world. So how many peers have you heard complaining about the situation or the social situation in which we're living in, but they are not taking action? And according to my experience, the number is high, and we have to make this number grow in favor of those who, of course, complain about the ongoing issues, but also take action. And so, because if it's our right to complain, it's also our duty to fight for climate change, since it's causing the spread of disease, crisis in agricultural system, water crisis, and extinction of animal and plant species. We have also the duty to stand up against racism, since a meta-analysis of 134 studies has shown that the effect of discrimination on the psychophysical well-being of victims are comparable to those ones of a stress syndrome. We have also the duty to stand up against poverty, since despite we all know that is the first goal of the Agenda 2030, the number of people suffering from hunger worldwide has risen to 828 million in 2021. And this is what emerged from a UN report that provides new evidence affirming that the world is moving further away from the goal of defeating hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition in all its form by 2030. It's also our duty to stand up for equal access to healthcare, since social justice is heavily linked to this. We have also the duty to stand up against the refugee crisis and immigration, since the fact that nearly 2 million refugees are expected to be relocated in 2023, according to what is stated by the UN Refugee Agency. And this represents the 36% of increase over 2022. There are several reasons for this, such as pandemic, climate change, terrorism, and other factors. Human trafficking and abuse mainly hurt women and kids. So according to a Save the Youngster assessment, likely all the children, and repeat, likely all children traveling to Europe via the Balkans encountered violence. And I could carry on like this. Coming to the end of my speech, brief speech, what I'm trying to say here is that we have to involve our peers is the biggest challenge, because we have to represent the system we want to change as young women and men, because we have to do this, and if we are not going to change things, no one will do that on our behalf. And personally, I always say that I can believe in it. Only, as Gandhi said once, that if this change, which in us, which are here, and we are talking about this big issue, and I do not think it's possible world more beautiful and colorful if we first start to be focused only on our needs and on our lives. So let's roll up our sleeves and keep influencing policymakers around the world and make them seek to respect our rights and our future. I finished.
Thank you, Maria, for your remark and answering my question. Next, I would like to invite Asutosh to answer the same question, and after that, we will give the floor to Anatish and Nas. But Asutosh, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I mean, I couldn't agree more than what my colleagues just spoke about. But talking from a very personal experience, I started working in the field of diplomacy or policy making from a very, very young age. And I believe one of the challenges which I faced, I would just like to share, which I believe a lot of youths around the globe are facing, is that people not taking youth seriously.
Mm.
That's one of the major things which I will say demotivates youth in order to be a part of the change. As my colleague, the associate minister, just mentioned about what Egypt is doing for the youths. I believe when it comes to youth participation in policy making or intergovernmental affairs or governmental affairs, it needs to be bilateral, because it's not about the government wanting to include the youths in the policy making. It's also the youths wanting to be a part of the policy making. I always say around the globe that people like us, the youths who are a part of the change, we are actually the minorities. There is millions of youths who really don't want to be a part of the change or to be a part of the policy making. I mean, if we are able to blame the government that the government is not doing enough for the youths, it needs to be also the both way system. I understand there's a lot of challenges for the youths, which in a way forces them to not be a part of the policy making. But this is something which I believe that the governments need to include in their systems in order for them to appreciate or basically influence the youths to be a part of the policy making. Because what we are currently working for is the future, especially as we are talking about the United Nations. We are working for the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and all the governments are also in understanding with the factor that these are some of the changes, these are some of the basic missions which needs to be achieved. And this is for the future, and youths are the future, and youths need to be a part of these changes or these decisions in order for us to decide what we want in the future. Because the youths back in my father, when he was of my age, what he needed is not what I need in my today's situation. What I currently need, maybe my kids won't need that, because the world keeps on changing. So we cannot vouch on a system which is basically following the same format from years which has been referred to. That is the reason I believe that youths need to be a part of the policy making. And that is something which is very much necessary, because people around the globe, the leaders, they don't know, majority of them don't know what youths want. And that's one of the major demotivation, I believe, for the youths in order to be a part of the policy making. Now, coming to the question which you asked, that how can maybe youths be a part of the policy making, what challenges they are facing, uh, I always say that youths are the next superpowers. If they're not already yet, youths are the next superpowers. And people of our age need to understand that the world is changing, and we need to change with the world, because we cannot decide, basically we cannot let the people work for us. We need to work for the people. If we believe the same thing, then I believe that change is like a absolute conclusion of that ideology. And that is something which I believe is a very necessary thing to be done. Secondly, I one of my missions in the recent years is to basically approach the Ministry of Educations in a lot of countries in order to include a different kind of education system with their respective youths of their countries, in order for them to give enough basically attribution for them to preach diplomacy, or to preach the change which we are trying to understand, because there's a lot of attributes, a lot of areas which policy making is involved, because policy making in general is a very, very huge topic. And I believe that the Ministry of Education needs to make sure that youths don't face these challenges first. Second, they need to understand that cultural immersion, as well as what I believe a thought of being multilateral, not being unilateral, needs to be embedded in the youths of today. Because what we believe, what I believe is not something which youth of my age believe in Far East or in Far West. We are all different people, and policies will be different for us. So we need to understand that factor as well, that what policies we see maybe in the East will be not in the West. So we need to understand that factor as well, and we need to coexist. And this is one of the things which is, I believe, is one of the things which United Nations in itself needs to understand and preach it more, in order for us to, I mean, youths, to be integral part of policy making on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asitush, for your important remarks. Next, I would like to invite Anitish Inez Guzman to first briefly introduce herself, her name and her designation, and then Aneti, I want you to answer the question that my other colleagues were answering about the youth inclusion and policy making, and what are the challenges that young people face from other generations when they want to get involved into the policy making, or what is the general challenge you think? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. My name is Annette Sanchez. I am your delegate of the United Nations, and as well, I work as an ambassador of UNICEF and other organizations. And taking into account the question that you have already mentioned and that all the panelists here have already answered, I think that we need to understand what this youth involves. So, according to the United Nations, youth is the persons that are between 12 and 29 years. So when we focus this type of age and when we focus this type of group sector in the table of decision making and of policy making, we can ensure that any people between this age, it's gonna be in one inequality, even if it's from Mexico, even if it's from Brazil, even if it's from United States, we are gonna have the same inequality that it's our age. So in this table of decision making, we also have to take into account that it's not the same listen to a 12-year person to a 29-year person. So that's one of the main issues that I can present to this table and to this panel. I am 17 years old. So I think that that's one of my main challenges, because even between youth, there's any there's some type of adultocentrism between us. So it's not the same being in a panel, being in the ECOSOC forum. I went last year to New York to the last week to New York to the ECOSOC forum, and one thing that I was saying is that most of the time, the persons that are involved in the decision making and in the policy making, even if we are youth or not, it's most of the youth that are 25 and above. So when we talk about those persons between 12 and 25, we are even not taking into account as youth in the policy making. So I think that's one of the main issues, this type of sector between youth about the 12 to 25 years and to 25 to 29 years, because those persons that are 25 to 29 years are persons that have already a master degree, or that have already any type of career, and those persons that are 12 to 20 or to 17, we don't have a career. I am in high school, and even that, I am in the table of decision making. I am also in this type of uh, international firms when we really make those policy making for all the world. But between youth, there's always this type of sector and this type of establish about how can we as youth and more youth can get involved in the policy making. So that's one of the main issues that I can present to this table. One of another main issue is that we are not seeing the problematic in an intersectional way. What do I refer to in intersectional? When we talk about the SDGs and the Agenda 2030, we do know that if we accomplish one SDG, we're gonna also make possible another SDG. Because sometimes we think that gender equality doesn't have any engagement between climate change or peace or poverty, but they do. And when we don't see this type of intersectional system that the SDGs present and that the agenda and the United Nations come to the table, we cannot see the real problematic that we have nowadays. Because when we just focus in one SDG, or when we focus in just one problematic in an intersectional or global system, we do not have any type of solution for a global system or for a sustainable system, because we see the problematics isolated and we do not have a focus between all the problematics that we have to solve in one single policy making. So that's one of the main issues that I have seen in most of the firms that I have attended. Last year I went to Geneva and we were talking about how the water and all this type of policy between green and orange economy, it's gonna focus also and it's gonna have an affection on the water improvement and also of the ecosystems sorry, regulations. So I think that that's one of the main issues, that when we talk about that topic in Geneva, we don't focus also in the social affections that they are going to have, not only in the daily activities that they do have to accomplish, because it's like forced about taking water, or about, I don't know, having an environment free of pollution. We are also talking about all those persons that have to migrate because of the climate change. We are talking about also all the labor market that it's in a lack of accomplishment because of the climate change. And we are also talking about this lack between gender equality. So when we see all these type of focus in an intersectional way, we can make a real decision and a real policy making in a sustainable way. And last, my third challenge that I have seen and that I have also lived in these in these international forums, and or also in my work, is that gender equality is still currently problematic, even if it's in Egypt, even if it's in Mexico, or even if it's in United States. We have the same problematic, that women is not taken into account in a parallelic way, because we see that women it's in the table of decision making, but only as a person that it's present. But even if it's present, we're not really taking into account in a real way, because we are not actively participating in the table of decision making. Because when we are in a forum and it's 50-50, 50 women, 50 whatever, 50 men, or also when it's divided in all their genders that any persons can be recognized, we are not uh, we are not being part in the real decision making, because we are just present, but we are not voting, we are not fighting, we are not raising the voice, because the same system doesn't let us to do it. Because sometimes when we are in these type of forums, we can be present, but we are not gonna have the word, just because it caused international lack between all those policies and also even culture. Because I went to COP27 last year in Egypt, and we were present. Women was present, and we went to COI, we went to COP, we were in the table of decision making and in the policy making. But when we want to raise the voice, we can't do it most of the time, because the same sector and culture of the country doesn't let us. So when we have this type of international forums on these places that doesn't let the policy making being part of women because of culture, we cannot raise the voice, because even if we have the space, we don't have the same opportunity. So that takes me to my final point, that it's youth is now present. We have the ECOSOC forum 3 days ago, and we went present. But most of the time on the forum and on the on the forum and on the talks, we were not really involved. We were present, but we didn't have the opportunity to even make some questions. We were present, but those who were talking in the Cossack forum were most part of the government, and were most part of these adult persons that are making policy making for youth, but it's not policy making by youth. So that's one of the main issues that we have nowadays, because youth is it's most seen um, as a politic in person, that it's okay, yeah, we're gonna take into account youth just to be politically correct, but we're not really making youth be active and be participating for their own policy making. We are making policies for youth, for climate change, for women, for taking into account youth in this table of decision making, but we are not letting youth to be part and to make their own policy making, because we are on an adultocentrism system. So that's one of the main issues that we have nowadays, because even if we are present, we are not really actively in those decisions that are not of our future and also of our present. Because as one of the panelists said, the youth is the future, but I can also add that we are the present, because nowadays global leaders need us, And global leaders need to take into account youth, because if they're not taking into account youth, we do not have an generational dialogue. And most of the solutions, and most in this active era of technology, if they are not taking into account all the youth persons, that most of the activism persons that are evaluating this type of problematics and this type of solution are youth. If they do not take this into account, we can find a common and intersectional and interregional solutions. So I can encourage all the persons here that are seeing this forum, also my panelists, and also United Nations, to take more into account youth, not only as a present person, also to take into account youth as one of the persons that are making these policies, that are being actively in this type of solution, and do not sectorize this type of youth, even if it's because of region or even if it's because of age. We are part of the same discussion, and we are humans, that we are the persons that really need a solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. And so I will move towards the last question that I want to ask from each of the panelists. First, I want to ask from Shitosh that as we were talking about, we talk about youth not getting involved into the policy making by themselves as well. So, why do you think that this is the case, and what is one advice you want to give to the young people who thinks that who don't want to get involved into the policy making? How do you motivate them?
Yes. So, see, I mean, obviously we can we can talk about a lot of reasons, which is mostly on a governmental level, you know. But now, but the major reason is that basically there is a lot of problems, when you talk about the youths, not every youth is privileged enough to actually think about what is happening in the society. I mean, you have a lot of youths who are in a lot of countries. I've seen they're fighting to just get a shelter, or they're fighting to just get an education, or they're fighting to just survive. When you have a youth who is surviving, who's fighting to survive, he or she is not going to basically be at the forefront of policy making. So this is one of the major challenges which I believe stops the youth, or basically it's like a hurdle for a youth in order to be a part of the part of a change, because there's again not a lot of opportunities which it gives youths the chance to be a part of policy making. One of the major things, one of the reason is basically there's not a lot of basically paid opportunities for this, and this is something which a lot of youths think that there is no future what we will do, because to be very honest, activism doesn't pay anything. So a lot of youths around the globe, they think, why should we do it when we are not getting paid? That's one of the major things what youth think of. Maybe because of lack of awareness and lack of knowledge of paid opportunities which are available for them to preach youth participation basically in policy making. So I believe that one of the things which can influence youths or can motivate youths is that government needs to put different governments need to put opportunities, paid opportunities for youths of their own countries to be a part of uh, uh, policy making, either be on a national level or either be even on a regional level. I mean, you don't need to sit at the United Nations, or you don't need to sit at the capital of your country in order to preach the change. You can do it from your own society. You can do it from your own regional governmental situations. So this is something which is very much appreciated, which will be very much appreciated from the government, and I really urge them to do this, because this is something which will again motivate youths, and it will create the awareness as well, because not a lot of youth, some of the many of the youths don't even have access to digital privileges, so they don't even know how to find the opportunities. So I believe that regional governments need to put their foot forward in order for them to create that level of awareness, that there are opportunities which exists for youths, and for the youths, I want to say this. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Sorry. For the youths, I always say this, that listen to what people are saying to you, because only you know what you want. And if you really want to be a part of the change, trust me, nobody else can tell you things, what to do and what not to do. So that's again one of the things which, as a youth, this is the challenge which exists, and we youth can only fight it. So we need to fight this challenge in order for us to be a part of the uh, policy making, or to be a part of the change which is happening on a constant level with the national and the multilateral level. And that's something I really believe is necessary, but for both the government and for the youths. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asitosh. My next question is from Maria, and it's a really important question, and it's on the gender equality challenge, especially for the women and especially for the young women. And how do you think, like, we definitely know, and especially in the region of Global South, we absolutely know that how women and young women generally are excluded from the process of the decision making. And when they try to do so, they get attacked, they get bullied, they are discouraged to do so. They are sexualized when they try to do so. So, what is your take on that, and what is your one advice to such women, especially in Global South, who face a lot of pushback when they try to get involved into the decision-making process or policy making?
Okay. If you want to go on it, you mentioned this issue before, you can, because you mentioned the problem, the issue, so I saw you really care about it. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and
yeah, I
good. Can you
can
repeat
the
it,
person.
because there's like, yeah, thank you, that's great. Yeah, so I think that gender equality is one of the main issues nowadays, not only because of the original part of this part of being in a place of policy making, that the culture and also the religion, it's also involved in how does the women participation it's happening, but also because of, once again, the um, this type of inter between the SDGs, because it's not the same for of being women, and it's not the same of being indigenous women, and it's not the same being an indigenous woman that it's living in Saudi Arabia, and it's not the same an indigenous woman that it's living in Saudi Arabia that it's in a condition of poverty. So when we see this, how does these intersectional problematics are involved in one same problematic that it's gender equality, we can also think how difficult it is for a person to really get involved in the policy making and in those spaces of policy making, because at least for me, that I am women, that I am 17 years old, that I am this sector of youth, that I am from Mexico, that it's a country that has a lot of political problematics, for saying like that, and corruption, that it's the truth. It's more difficult to get involved in those policy making, and if it's difficult for me, I can imagine how difficult it's for those persons, so for those women that are also, as the moderator said, in Saudi Arabia and of those countries that the same policy and the same system does not let women to being actively part of the decision making, because the same system of the country does not let him, because of religion and culture. So I think that that's one of the main issues that we have nowadays about policy making, and about how to take really into account this type of intergenerational dialogue, because it's not the same to talk with a person that it's nowadays more disruptive and then want to find a solution about gender against a person that is actively in policy but does not have this mindset or of gender political participation. So I think that's one of the main issues that we have nowadays, but that United Nations has worked with UN Women and also with UN Youth and Boy to have this participation uh, in a equality way. And also most of the countries are trying to make it, because nowadays it's a policy to have this type of youth ambassadors or youth delegates on the table of decision making, even if it's COP or even if it's ECOSOC of GA, whatever type of council of the United Nations, and also to have this parity system between women and men and other genders, because that's also important to talk about. We are not only women and men, we have many genders nowadays, so we have to also we need their voices in the decision making to be completely represent and to have a real and intersectional dialogue. So yeah, I think that's one of the main issues, and I encourage to find any type of solution between countries and also between international organisms by policy making, such as United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria, what's your brief take on the issue being in Europe? What do you think about this issue from your perspective, from your lens?
Okay. According to my experience in my country, in Italy, but also here in France, so let's say in Europe in general, because since I have been, for example, at European Parliament in November, I have been to this workshop was concerning exactly on policy making, even in the European Union. And what one of the main issues that's where planted on the field that was explained by the people that were presenting the workshop of policy making precisely, is that there is on the other part and according to my experience, a huge lack and disaffection to things that is public. So in Latin is said res publica, that is a legal term to say what is belonging to everyone. What is, for example, for example, opportunities offered by public services to women, but also men. According to experience is that I had the opportunity to hear, is that this huge disaffection, and in my country I actually and really saw it everywhere. For example, in my classes in high school, university, is the disaffection that we youth, but even women, we have other priorities. We have other priorities like how to get a job, a working position, how to build a curriculum vitae, a CV, because if not, we are not getting opportunities, we are not getting a job, and not everyone has the opportunity to stay on the ground for years looking for a job, and in the meantime thinking about think of others. They think of that is belonging to the country, to Europe, let's say, from a larger way. So my experience, but even in France here in university, is this lack of interest of the future that belongs to others also, and not ours only. And so I think that youth should be more at the center of the debate, of the public debate, and under the spotlight. Because, for example, we have other problems in Italy. One big problem that is under the spotlight is immigration. But youth is we can say there are lacks in youth, in legislation concerning youth, that are large in the same way like immigration, but youth is never taken in account. And when we, for example, bring a draft law, when we did the last year, now today in Italy, what are the outcomes? There is no outcome. There is no outcome from the political parties, and the political party concerned that taking into account our law proposal. So I think that the solution to this affection that has different consequences should be raising awareness, for example, in schools, isn't just in high schools, but for example in elementary schools, the sustainable agenda, the importance of gender equality should be brought to the table from the elementary school and from when a kid is little, because when a kid is little, is forming his ideas, his values, his education. And I think that it can be and could be a great opportunity to be implemented in Italy, but also in other society in Europe as well as in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that answer. That was really insightful. Mustafa, my last question is from you, and it's really important. Like at the young age, you become the minister, and for the youth affairs. And my first question from you is that how a young person who want to be the minister, want to be into the policy making, let's say, how do you do it, and how you want to advise young people that they can do the same? And second, I want to being in a political spectrum, I want you to briefly highlight the importance of young people actually getting registered as a voter and going out to vote, because many young people, they do not go out to vote. So floor is yours.
Thank you. I would like to refer these days we are preparing to officially launch our national anti-adolescence youth strategy in Egypt, which prepared in 2 years with UNFPA to establish a new meaning about youth participation in policy making, and prepared and this strategy has adopted a participatory planning methodology to reflect the demands and opinions of Egyptian adolescents and youth, and sought their opinions through different available means and mechanisms. And this strategy was drafted with the engagement and voices of adolescents and youth, as well as the relevant bodies such as ministries and local institutions and local and regional and international organization. But the main body and the main outcome come from the youth. We had more than 17 workshops and hearing sessions were held in different governorates in Egypt, in all Egypt, as I mentioned before. But now these workshops were conducted with different youth groups, such as farmers, workers, young entrepreneurs, young people with disabilities, youth-led organizations, scouts, and Red Crescent Society volunteers, youth entities, and Azhan peacemakers, youth forum, young innovators, writers, and artists, people from the cities, people from the villages, and pioneers. All this we had met them for in 2 years, more than 10,000 adolescents to have from different ages group for all governorates, and also we have many people participated online to have a draft for this strategy and their opinions and demands. And as a result of these different workshops, we set a motivating principles for our national strategy, and we formulated it, which puts which this puts youth at the forefront of the nation's priorities and identifies the investment in their potentials as a very important human resource in accordance with the international goals of sustainable development. And now we have young people, and these young people prepared the strategy, their own strategy, and they will work on evaluate this strategy, and every year we will have updates for this strategy, and we'll discuss the new added value for strategy, and we have something like a social or community group which will work to make sure that strategy and these plans and programs which included in this strategy will be on set and on the right way to achieve the best practical and best participation for young people in policy making in Egypt. And in Egypt, I think we have a deputy ministers, we have associate ministers, we have a deputy governorates now. But in next 5 years, and this 5 years for our strategy from 2023 to 2027, I think we will find a young ministry under 13, and we'll find governorates under 13. It is a challenge in Egypt, and we have a plan and long-term plan. And in 2013, I think most of the Egyptian government will be in young age. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. As we move forward to the further closing of this session, Maria, any final closing remarks from your side? Any closing remarks from your side, Maria? You're mute.
I was here.
Can you hear me? Mustafa?
Do you hear him or not? Or not?
He asking you for final talk if you want to add something.
Final closing remarks. Yes. Can you hear me now?
I have been really happy with his experience, his years, and from actually in general, I think that we usually and often see our point of view, our reality, our story, our experience. And so I'm really glad to have been invited and having the opportunity to hear other point of view, because I think that policymaking is exactly that. So listening to others, seeing the world from other point of views, because today and this evening for me, but this day for you, this afternoon for you, I have been received really other ideas on which I will work in the following months. Thank you. And thank you, Mustafa, that you are here, because others are not really longer here, for your experience, really, really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Mustafa, any final remarks from you?
Sure. I just hope that all young people from all over the world take the initiative and participate in their community, aiming to develop it. I started from 10 years or maybe more in my community in Egypt, and I had a dream, and now I am in the dream. I achieving this dream, not for me only, but for all my friends in my age, same age, maybe younger, maybe older. But every young people should create positive bonds and link with their peers in their age, in maybe in the street, maybe in this club, maybe in the youth center. I think by youth capabilities, the future will be better for us and for our next generations. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, Maria, and other speakers who unfortunately have to go without because of their schedule. And indeed, as it is an important conversation that all of you heard from our expert speakers on how we can get engaged into the policy making, and I really hope as we do get, because the population of young people all around the world is huge, it's large, and it's just a small number that I want to give you, that the 85% of the world of the population of just the global south is under 30, which is 4.5 billion people under 30 in the entire world. So this is a lot. And then there are 1.9 billion people who are under the age of 24. That's the global population. And the figures are from the UNFPA, who monitors the census around the world and do the population data. So getting involved into the politics by young people, it's really important, because they're not getting involved. It means that the 85% of the world of the global south population is not getting involved into the politics, and not getting involved into the decision making or policy making, and then we are complaining and we are having a lot of different problems. So this has to change, and thank you so much once again all the speakers for having this wonderful conversation, and we look forward in the future to have you all more on board in such conversations. Thank you so much.